Doveland, Wisconsin. A town that, if you ask most people, never existed. But ask the right person, well, perhaps maybe the wrong ones as well, and you'll hear a different story. You'll hear about a place that sat quietly in central Wisconsin, just far enough off the beaten path to be forgettable. No tourist attractions, no bustling downtown, just a small Midwestern town like hundreds of others, until it wasn't. Doveland was said to be home to a modest population, the kind of town where everyone knew each other, and most people lived their entire lives without ever leaving. Main Street had a diner, a post office, and a hardware store. Families gathered for town events, and kids played in the nearby woods. It wasn't anything exciting, but it was home. Then, one day in the late 80s, or even early 90s, Doveland simply disappeared. The town didn't vanish in the usual sense. There was no apocalyptic event, no reports of a disaster on the news. It was more as though Doveland had been quietly and deliberately erased. Ask someone who lives in the area about Doveland, and they'll likely shrug and say they don't remember such a place. Maybe they'll mention a vague recollection of hearing the name, or they'll tell you it sounds like a ghost story. There are no official records of it. Old maps, government documents, and census data don't list it. It's as though Doveland never existed at all. But if you dig deeper, you'll find a handful of people scattered across internet forums and late-night chat rooms who claim otherwise. They'll tell you they remember Doveland. Some say they grew up there or passed through it on a road trip. A few even claim to have souvenirs, old postcards, t-shirts, or maps with Doveland's name on them. They're rare and hard to verify, but they surface just often enough to keep the legend alive. One of the most popular theories is that Doveland was the site of a secret government experiment, something along the lines of time travel, alternate dimensions, or highly classified technology. According to this story, something went horribly wrong, and the town was erased from existence to cover up the disaster. This theory suggests that the government wiped out not just the town, but the memories of those who live nearby. It's a chilling idea, one that plays into the worst fears about the potential power of shadowy government agencies and secret programs. Others argue that Doveland fell victim to a natural or man-made catastrophe, perhaps a nuclear accident, a chemical spill, or some other environmental disaster. In this version of events, the town's destruction was so total that the government erased any evidence of the incident to avoid responsibility. The residents of Doveland were either killed or relocated, their existence scrubbed from public records as part of a cover-up. According to this theory, the reason so few people remember Doveland is because they were conditioned not to. For some, Doveland is more of a mystery rooted in the strange phenomenon known as the Mandela effect, where people claim to remember things that never existed or recall events that history records differ on. In this case, those who remember Doveland believe they're recalling a town from an alternate dimension or an alternate timeline, one that was erased or merged with our own. The idea is that the people who remember Doveland do so because they experienced reality differently from the rest of us. They're holding on to memories of a place that no longer exists in this version of reality, or possibly never existed in our version of reality. Then there's the more mundane possibility. that Doveland was a real, if unremarkable, small town that eventually fell into decline and was abandoned. Over time, the land was absorbed by the surrounding wilderness, and the town was forgotten. No grand conspiracy, no alternate dimension, just a small place of rural America fading into obscurity, as so many other places have. And yet, something about this explanation feels incomplete. Why then would there be so little trace of its existence? Why the strange stories of cover-ups, government experiments, and alternate realities? One of the most peculiar aspects of the Doveland mystery is the handful of so-called artifacts that still circulate in certain circles. Some people claim to have postcards stamped with a Doveland postmark, old t-shirts with the town's name, or even utility bills and tax records addressed to Doveland. But every time someone claims to have proof, it seems to vanish as quickly as the town itself. Some say the items are fakes, or just generic souvenirs from a different town with a similar name. Others believe that they are remnants of a reality that no longer exists, pieces of a puzzle that can't quite be completed. For paranormal enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists, Doveland represents a tantalizing mystery. It's a modern-day Roanoke, a town that seemingly vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions. For skeptics, it's just another internet myth, a ghost story for the digital age. But what makes Doveland stand out is the way it taps into something deeper. Our fear of being forgotten. The idea that a place and all the people who could live there could be erased so completely is unsettling. It forces us to confront uncomfortable questions, like how fragile is our existence? How easily could our reality be altered or erased? Whether Doveland ever really existed, or whether it's just a figment of a collective imagination, the story has taken on a life of its own. It's become a cautionary tale about things that slip through the cracks, the places and people that disappear without explanation. It's a story about the limits of our memory and the ways in which reality can be manipulated or erased. It's a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying mysteries are the ones that leave no evidence behind. The legend of Doveland may never be solved. There may never be a map that pinpoints its exact location, or an artifact that definitely proves its existence. But the mystery will continue to linger, whispered in hushed tones on the dark corners of the internet, discussed by those who are drawn to the unknown and the unexplained. Doveland may be gone, or it may have never been, but in a way that doesn't matter. The story, like the town, lives on in the minds of those who remember or think they do.